Hotep, everybody. This is your brother Beniti Amon Ray. Here to talk about. Got a lot of emails throughout the week about the deity they call Baphomet, the misconceptions behind this deity. Most people associate it, unfortunately, with Satanism, or they associate it with devil worship, because they really don't understand what it represents, or I should say what it really means. As you know, I believe it was last month, July 27th, 2015, there was a satanic group that unveiled a big so-called Baphomet statue in Detroit that a lot of people were opposed to and raising hysteria about. Now, what I've found funny about this was, when you look at that statue of Baphomet, it's not a true depiction of Baphomet, because it doesn't. One key thing it's missing is the female breasts. It does not have that, and it's missing a lot of the other symbolism. It just focuses on the goat head as a man, and it focuses on the negative things. In detail, let's discuss real briefly what is, for a lack of a better word, or what does Baphomet represent? Okay, it's the energy that the deity actually represents and the symbolism behind it. Okay, now basically, what people, again, get misconstrued about or get thrown off is they're influenced by the definitions that have been established of what Baphomet is and what it represents, and it's always negative. First, when we look at the breakdown of the symbols, you have in the center of the Baphomet head, you have the fire symbol coming up through the center, right by the third eye or the pineal gland. This represents the Kundalini energy rising up, going through the chakras. The fire represents the fire element. You have the wings of Baphomet, which represent the air. You have the scales on the abdomen area, which tie into the water and represent the water element, and perched on the earth, from which all those elements tie in. You have the wings, which represent the air as they expand. You also see him depicted, or it depicted in the picture, with one finger pointing up, one down, correlating and confirming the doctrine of correspondence. As above, so below. And in between that, as above, so below, the person is supposed to seek that spiritual balancement. You also have the head, the male goat head, representing the male, and the breasts, which represents the female. Now, this is lacking in that statue that I mentioned earlier, and that represents the male, the masculine and the feminine principles of the energies that govern the planet and that govern the nature of human beings. The masculine and feminine principles. So this, the true occultist or the true metaphysicist understand, has nothing to do with what modern day people would call Satanism, devil worship. It's something, again, that was taken from our ancient sciences, distorted and twisted around, and now people are completely spooked out about it, and they have the incorrect capacity to interpret it, because they get these false influences from everybody else and don't actually understand and do the research to figure this out for themselves. Now, you also have, some say, and this is, to me, is a bunch of bullshit, but I'll dispel the myth on it. Also on the forehead of Baphomet, you have the five-pointed star, the pentagram, which some people associate also with satanic worship or devil worship. And some theories is you'll see it depicted with the point facing upwards, which they say represents the occultist, and the point facing downward, which is supposed to represent the Satanist when that star is facing downward. That's a bunch of garbage. True occultist knows that when one deals with that, it's about the energy. That doesn't change the positioning of the energy in any shape, form, or fashion. I think some people have given that interpretation who are highly influenced by religion and are spooked out and don't really understand what the symbol actually represents. Then you have some ignorant people that associate the term Lucifer, the devil, and Baphomet all in the same category, and none has anything to do with the other, and that's what I find funny about it. The funny thing is those that say that Lucifer is the devil, they're also saying that Jesus is the devil if you believe in the Bible and you're a Christian. And I'm going to simply explain to you, because in Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12, it refers to Lucifer as son of the morning star. It also refers to Jesus as son of the morning star in the book of Revelations. So really, who is this Jesus, and who are Christians really worshiping, and do they really understand the energy that it represents? And the answer to that question is no, because they literally believe in the Bible. They don't understand about the symbolisms and the energies and some of the hidden meanings of these concepts. They just literally take it for face value. They don't realize they're reading books that have been watered down and translated and changed over time because certain individuals had an agenda. That's a whole nother story. So the word Lucifer has nothing to do with Baphomet or the devil or Satanism, because remember, Satanism is a system that was just created by Caucasians, a system they came up with in adverse to Christianity. Everything in Satanism is anti-Christian. You have the inverted crosses, you have the black mass. If you look at the whole symbolisms of how it's set up, it's basically a system of anti-Christianity. In this country, it was established and founded by who everybody knows as Anton Levy, who founded the first satanic church in California. On June 6, 1966, it was given its first charter by, guess what, who? Ronald Wilson Reagan, who was the governor of California at that time. And look at the symbolicisms they put there. You have June 6, 1966, the day the charter was given, 666. This is all done intentionally. And then you have Ronald Wilson Reagan. When you break down his first, middle, and last name, you got 18 letters. Each name has 6 characters, 666. This shit is done intentionally. These people know what they're doing, all to create that inferior mind complex to spook the mind out. So, long story short, that has nothing to do with anything in regards to what the true occult breakdown and meaning of what Baphomet is. Two totally different things. So I've gotten emails and questions on this throughout the course of the week, so I kind of wanted to dispel the mythism and the spookism behind that. I think, because people, regardless if they consider themselves conscious or not, I think people are still very spooked out about this, who claim to be raised to a level of consciousness. Some aren't. But a true occultist, and remember the word occult simply means the hidden, or one who follows this hidden path, which is not mainstream to most. On the surface it may appear to be. These are people that study the higher levels and higher learnings of this information. And they're able to tap into the subconscious mind and are able to assimilate this information and utilize the energies of it and what it represents and tap into those energy forces. This is what all of those multitude of symbols of Baphomet actually represent. This is the truth and the reality of it. Having said that, on that note, somebody that deals with the occult as opposed to somebody that deals with religion, let's explain the difference of that, the path of the occult. An occultist doesn't blame anything or anybody for their shortcomings. They take full responsibility for their actions. They don't worship gods outside of themselves. This is all a slave master mind state. If you do that, you're still in that state of mental slavery. An occultist accepts responsibilities for his actions or her actions and understands they're in the predicament they're in because of themselves, not because of anybody else's fault. A religious person will blame an outsider or an external force called the devil or God, or say somebody is doing something against them because they don't want to accept the responsibilities of who and what they are. Unfortunately, that's a reality. So an occultist's mind frame is on that level. Now we have to establish 3 things here. Let's talk about real quick the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and what they call the superconscious mind, which they say the superconscious mind is the higher self. And that's what we need to really learn to tap into to get to that next level, because it all exists within the mind. Is that not what the first principle of the doctrine, the 7 principles of Tahuti are, which is mentalism? And everything is mental. All is mental, and mental is all. Once you understand that principle, you unlock the hidden mysteries of the mind, and you're able to tap into anything into the universe. This is what this is saying. So when you deal with the path of the occult, you don't accept anything that exists outside of yourself, in the sense you don't worship a God that you believe, or as monotheistic people believe, resides in the heaven and is some figure that controls every force or aspect of your life. That's going outside of yourself. You become subjective to those external forces, and therefore you now, as I said, you become part of the experiment and you don't control it. This unfortunately is what goes on amongst individuals, and it creates that certain mindset. It creates that state of confusion where people don't understand or are able to absorb correctly the principles that these things represent. Now, as I said, the higher, or your superconscious mind, representing your higher self, your subconscious mind, which you tap into or are able to, but are not always aware of how it is working, because it's working all the time, whether you're conscious of it or not. And then there's your conscious mind, which your conscious mind would be, let's say, per se, what you would do on a daily basis. I'm hungry. I'm gonna, get something to eat. I'm gonna go take a shower, etc. These are things that you are conscious of on a daily basis. Now the subconscious mind sometimes tends to feed off of the conscious mind, and it's sandwiched in between the conscious and the superconscious mind. Now, this is important to understand, because this is how information, knowledge, and energies affect you, and it determines how it's assimilated and broken down within the structure of your mind. Unfortunately, those who are spoon-fed information consciously and take the face value or the surface explanation of these things, they're the ones that are easily tricked into believing the nonsense. For an example, what you get about this deity Baphomet and what it truly represents, and how some people ridiculously associate it with Satanism and devil worship, because they're taking the face value information. Again, another aspect of our information and how it was stolen, and again taken and indoctrinated and given a whole bunch of illusions that hold no weight. Now, having said that, and we clarified separating the misconceptions of what Baphomet is and what it truly represents, and how the word Lucifer has no connection to it whatsoever. The word Lucifer, as I said before, just simply means light bearer, one illuminated. Somehow that title got given, to the devil. But then on the flip side, these are the same assholes that will call this fictitious character, the devil, the prince of darkness. So which one is it? Is it one who is illuminated, full of light bearer, or is it one who is the prince of darkness? Because remember, their so-called Jesus is given the same exact title in the book of Revelations: Son of the Morning Star, the Root of David. It's right there in their Bible. So there's some confusion here. Somebody intentionally or individuals, I should say, have set out intentionally to cause some confusion, so people couldn't really put these things together. So let's establish that. Now again, back in July last month, there's a satanic group out in Detroit that unveiled this statue of so-called Baphomet. Now go back and look at the statue. It looks nothing like the ancient depictions of the true occult symbol of Baphomet, because one key thing missing from this statue: it has no breasts. It just has the chest of a man. And to really understand the occult symbol of Baphomet, you can't leave that feminine principle out of the equation. You can't do it. So there's another example of somebody that has not done the research to really understand what it represents and means, because you can break down that statue and see that's something that somebody has an agenda and is intentionally trying to project their consciousness about what it represents on the masses. And they got a reaction, obviously, out of people in Detroit, religious people in an uproar, etc., etc. All part of the process and the plan and the experiment. So the questions, the comments, and the concerns that I did receive about Baphomet, I hope that clears up some of the spooky misconceptions. Other questions I got in connection to it were, some people have done research and say that it's connected to the Knights of Templar. There's a connection there, but don't believe some of that bullshit, because some of that stuff was mixed in there as far as the worship of the Baphomet head. Some say the Knights of Templar had a secret cult that worshipped the Baphomet head. What the fuck does that really mean, honestly? So what did they do? There's theories and speculation on so-called rituals they did that really can't be confirmed. It's speculation. Now, are there in the higher degrees of some of these esoterical and Masonic orders a connection with Baphomet? Most definitely. And I can tell you this from experience, having gone through majority of those orders. The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, York Rite, which is a little bit more Christianized, Order Temporis Orientis, or OTO. The higher Templar orders have a whole series of degrees and levels of information on Baphomet, but from an occult perspective. But when people hear it, they automatically attribute it to Satanism, which is completely incorrect. It's more of the occult or the metaphysical principles of what the energy represents. So yes, there definitely is a connection there to an extent of what it represents in some of those higher degrees. But I think the sensationalism was sprinkled in later on down the road by people that had an agenda, especially religious people that had an agenda to incite fear and ignorance, so people can be afraid. And your most people that are afraid and don't understand this are your people that are religious, because they'll accept if anybody religious says, "Oh, this is devil worship," they just automatically they automatically accept it, and they don't come or raise themselves up to the realization if it is or if it's not. Now, like I said, real truth, okay, is when you raise yourself up to the reality of that truth. That is real truth, not because somebody told you, or not because you read it in a book, because you could read 1,000,000 books on any subject you want, any metaphysical, any occult subject that you want. You can read 1,000,000 books on that. It doesn't mean, you've got the truth. You have to, as we say, we use the terminology all the time, or I use the terminology all the time, you have to do the work. And if you don't do the work, shit just becomes irrelevant. You just basically, you have a bunch of information up here, but you're not applying that information to raise yourself up to the reality and the realization of the truth of that information, or tapping into what we call the divine reality. And that's when that divine reality becomes truth. So hopefully all that mythology that people have in their mind about Baphomet, about Lucifer, the devil, Satanism, witch, magic, etc., get the fictitious spoon-fed explanations of it that they've given to you out of your mind, because that's not what the reality of it is. Just like they've done with Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and lower levels of information, they also tried to so-called infiltrate the higher levels of information. But here's the problem: what happens, and I'm gonna explain this, and this is important to really grasp and understand. What tends to happen is you got a lot of people who teach on consciousness, who go into different levels of it historically, geographically. They get into different cultures. They talk about the mysteries of Egypt, how the pyramids were built, different tribes. This stuff is great. It's needed to a certain extent. But what tends to lack from that perspective, there's no level of spirituality there. When you get them to the physical, when they leave the physical and you try to get them to break down the spiritual principles of it, it's lacking. It's not there. There's no substance, meaning when you start talking about astral traveling, astral projection, psychic projection, dream interpretation, dream world work, contacting the spiritual realms, bringing down ancestral spirits, things of this nature, this is where the fork comes in the road, and most people get pushed to the side because they can't take it to that level. But you have 1,000,000 motherfuckers that can talk all day about the history and the glory of Egypt and Africa, and feed off of your emotions and your ego, but that's it. They leave you there. But they can't teach you any of these higher sciences that you're able to learn and apply on an everyday basis to transform your very life. And when I say transform your very life, to alter the spiritual energies around you to make them work and assist you. And you will find out in doing that, you will basically find out once you tap into the superconscious mind, and you realize you break that system of confinement where you're confined to this realm. Once you know you can break that and travel anywhere you want by tapping into the inner workings of the mind, you truly become free. That's what it truly means to become free. But once you start over intellectualizing and arguing physical things and nonsense on a consistent basis, then it creates more of a problem and a mindset that is sometimes hard for people to get out of, because they get stuck in it, and there's no way for them to really progress out of that, unfortunately. So this is what really a true or occultist or somebody that deals with metaphysics, how do they approach it? It's beyond religion. It's beyond faith. It's beyond belief. We know that these deities are archetypes of the energies that they represent. We don't literally look into the literal aspect of it, because the problem is, this is where you get jammed up or stuck like Chuck, is when you take the literal aspect of it. See, some people take it literally, and then it kind of creates the illusion of contradiction, because they're not understanding that it's an archetype energy that exists within your DNA. And that's why I've said on previous posts, some people will literally even take the Egyptian deities and they'll take them literal, and subconsciously, whether they're not aware of it or not, they worship these deities like people in monotheistic religions would. And that creates a certain mindset that's incorrect, because that's not what this is about. These are objects. For example, you see the Anubis statue behind me. Anubis is energy, or a representation of that spiritual connection between the physical and the spiritual world. There's Anubis magic that you can connect to that connects those principles. And if you really know what the representation of Anubis was, or the deity, or the black jackal dog of the so-called dead, that is that connection from the physical to the spiritual realm, it's a certain energy that it represents, and you are able to tap into the Anubu or the Anubis energy by way of different meditations and different rituals that you can do. But to take that deity or that statue literally and focus worship on it like you would a statue in Christianity is ridiculous, because then you're back to the same old idiotic way of thinking. Now, let me give you an example. Something, again, that my good brother Panic, and much love and respect to brother Panic, had broke down and clarified to show you how the mind works. It can fuck with you, and the mind could either be your best friend or it could be your worst enemy, depending on how you use it. And you'll find this is the biggest enemy you're going to fight on a daily basis. It ain't going to be the white man. It's not going to be anything externally outside of yourself. The biggest battle you're going to face is internally, and it all starts in the mind. Okay? Now, having said that, again, I think it was 2 or 3 shows back on the Awakening Universal Minds radio show, Brother Panic had made a statement. Some people that leave, say, Christianity and come into consciousness, whatever level it is. It could be Egypt, it could be Aruba, it could be Santeria. It could be any forms of those levels of information. Some people still have the same mindset that they did originally when they were in Christianity. For an example, if you listened to the show per se, I think it was last week when Brother Ravana Noon was talking about a friend that he had that was initiated into the mysteries of Ogun, for an example. And that individual made a statement, well, thanks to, me being saved by Ogun, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Ogun. That's still a Christian mindset. That's no different than a Christian saying, thank God I found Jesus and I was saved by Jesus, and if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I would be today. Okay? Some people, and again, as Brother Panic stated, some people just verbally confess that they've given, per se, in this case, Christianity up, but they haven't gone into the subconscious mind, and they haven't addressed the trauma and the impact that it still affects them to. So it's more than just verbally saying, I reject it. It's also addressing how the trauma and the impact it's had on the mind. That's key. So that's an important aspect to look at, how the mind works and the effects of how that works, and moving forward, the impact that it has on one's ability to really facilitate proper thoughts. Now remember, you become your thoughts. So if you accept these principles, for an example of Baphomet and Lucifer and all these fictitious illusions that they've created, if you accept them in your mind as evil, and again, you become your thoughts, then that is what it becomes, because you have stamped in the mind that this is what this has become. And to me, it's kind of ridiculous, because I think some people that add the sensationalism to this information are the ones that get trapped in a certain ideology, and they can't, work themselves out of it. So hope that clarifies majority of the misconceptions on some of the emails that I've received on what is the deity Baphomet. And again, those that are ignorant will associate it with Satanism and devil worship because they don't understand it. Because this is, again, the information that they've been spoon-fed. And remember, the symbolisms behind it represent those principles, the masculine and feminine principles. Again, that's why you see the head of the goat head of a male or a man. You see the breast, which represents the female or the feminine principles. You have one finger pointing up, one down, again, representing as above, so below, or the doctrine or correspondence. You have the earth, air, wind, fire element represented through the body, the scales. You have the flame right by the forehead, again, I said, as shooting up, representing the kundalini going up through the chakras. This is all representing, again, totality, equilibrium, balancement, and one seeking that balancement and their place in the universe. And it's a powerful symbol if one is able to tap into the energy and the frequencies of that deity. It also goes back to the Greek deity Pan, which gets into a whole nother aspect. There's a connection between both of those deities and what those energies represent. So there's nothing spooky about it. There's nothing evil about it. It's only evil if you make it evil, point blank. So those that don't understand are confused. Now what I want to close out with real quick, and this is a book that I have quoted several times in doing posts. It's called The Emerald Tablet, Alchemy for Personal Transformation, by Dennis William Huck. And one other thing I want to address that I think is really stupid, because you hear people say this, or for all the pro-black Negroes that want to do everything black, because that's a slave system within itself. Some people say, well, that book is written by a Caucasian or a white person. I don't read books written by white people. Well, you're stupid as hell. Because, again, as to quote Brother Panic, white people would just be a lesser extension of melanated people. That's it. It's not, if you separate it from yourself and don't understand it, we're not going to get into a whole genetic and scientific breakdown of that at this moment. They're just a lesser extension or a vibrational energy or frequency of yourself. That's it. So to sit there and say that I won't read information if it's not written by a black person, you're completely fucking stupid. Because what if you don't really know the origin and the essence or the mindset of that black person? It could be totally adverse to what you are. So making stupid excuses because you don't want to expand your consciousness, unfortunately you get that. I know people over the years, they'll take that approach, which I think is ridiculous, because a true master metaphysicist or a master teacher or a scientist or somebody that deals with the occult reads everything and can extract out of it what needs to be applied, because it's all our information anyway. So I'm not one in that mindset. I read books by anything and everybody. I don't care who and what it's written by. I know what to take out of it, what needs to be extracted, etc. So if you're in that mindset that, I don't read anything if it's not written by somebody black, that shit's comical to me. But anyway, what I wanted to point out here, let me get to it. It was the 7 steps of alchemy. I'm going to leave you with this. And we'll deal with the 7 operations of alchemy. I think this kind of sums it up in a nutshell to understand how the subconscious mind works, how to visualize these principles and not get caught up in the sensationalism of it. Let's read this real quick. It says, the 7 steps of transformation in their initiation ceremonies. Some of these practices began well before the 3rd century. The probationary period began with the lesser mysteries, which were public lessons in the Hermetic texts and correct behavior in light of them. So you got the surface information first, okay? If the initiate progressed to the greater mysteries, meaning if you showed your worth, he began an experiential journey through the 7 planets and the energy that he represented. By applying the operations of the alchemist, the initiate was able to overcome each of the planetary restrictions, to return to the stars and be reborn as the true self hidden in the soul, which is part of the signature of God in each of us. Now, it said the signature or the energy of God in each of us, not outside of you, not somewhere, in the skies, but the signature of God that exists within you. Remember, a real occultist doesn't acknowledge anything external outside of themselves. We don't acknowledge anything that an individual who deals with monotheism calls God that exists outside of you. That's ridiculous. Okay? Having conquered the planetary archetypes, and keep in mind I use the word archetypes, The initiate became the adept, one who is skilled in the operations of alchemy. Next were oral teachings in a one-on-one setting in which the adept experienced a profound alteration of the consciousness and beheld the hermetic truths directly. At this point, the adept becomes the master. So to show you the different levels or the training briefly, and we'll talk about the 7 operations of alchemy on the next post. These are the stages one must go to assimilate the information. You have the surface information. That's what most of us are spoon-fed and given. But some people don't go beyond the surface. They just take it for face value. So if you believe, again, when a principle is thrown at you, if somebody says, well, this is what that is, and you just leave it at that, and so, for example, if somebody says, well, you know, Baphomet is represented with something that's negative or evil, and that's it, and you don't dig deeper, then that's what the subconscious mind stamps in it, and that's what you start to actually accept. You become the reality of that. Then one progresses on there to the higher mysteries, and then one goes into the oral traditions and the rituals, and then once you complete those levels of information, and this is, you know, symbolic and literal, a kind of combination of both, then one can become a master. So in that whole process, though, we haven't even gotten to the 7 operations of alchemy. In that process, that's how one truly makes truth a reality. Not because somebody told them, not because they read it in a book. You could read 1,000,000 books, watch 1,000,000 lectures, talk to 1,000,000 people. It doesn't mean shit if you don't take any of that information and apply it. Anyway, having said that, I think I'm going to stop there. I think that's enough for right now. Just a couple quick announcements. Hold on, let me pull it up, the flyer. 2 Saturdays from now, Saturday, September 5th, at 7:30 p.m., I'll be doing a class at Sophia's Garden of Ma'at, a continuation of spiritual magic. Do you really know what black magic is, witchcraft, Satanism, etc., breaking down and dispelling the real and taking away all the spookism and the myths behind it. That'll be Saturday, September 5th, 7:30 p.m. Mission is free, no charge. Just support vendors that are there. Sister Sophia, who offers different things there. I myself am there out there with tons of books and products. You can definitely come out there, and most of the stuff we talk about on the radio show and here on the YouTube channel, we have books available on that information. The address for that event is 3450 Northwest 169th Terrace, Miami Gardens, Florida 33056. You could also contact Brother Yehuda. I'll give you Brother Yehuda's phone number, 786-357-1899. You could also email me at khnum19@gmail.com. Tune into the show this Thursday night, Awakening Universal Minds. We have Brother Panic on September 3rd. The following Thursday, for those when we had problems 2 weeks ago plugging in Dr. Jewel Pookrum when we lost the connection with her, she'll be back on September 3rd, and we'll do that show over again. You could also go to the Awakening Universal Minds Facebook page, questions, comments, anything you might want to suggest or comments on the show, feel free to go do that. That's about it. I think that kind of covers what I wanted to address and get into today. So for those that had sent emails and are watching this, I hope that clears up the spooky misconceptions of the deity Baphomet and the energy that it represents, and stop believing all that bullshit and do the research for yourself, and don't believe anybody's interpretation on anything. Raise yourself up to the realization of it, and you'll never be able to fall for the bullshit. So that's it for now, and Hotep, and we will see you on the next post.